Que lo que mi gente, welcome to the Monoplaza F1 podcast. As always, I am your host, Emi Beltre, and this week we have not one, but two illustrious guests. We only get the best people to come on the show, by the way. So I'm going to introduce a new person first. George Nelson, thank you for coming on. How you doing?
My friends, it's very good to be here. I don't actually talk like that, but it's great to be here. I'm doing well. This is actually my first podcast that I ever go on.
Oh,
so
nice.
I'm excited.
Hey, I'm glad I could be a part of it. And as always, is the Grandmaster of F1 himself, Didier Breval. Didi, hey, welcome back. Saw you last week. How you doing?
Hey.
How's the week?
Week has been riveting, exciting. The fallout of just the weekend has just been. I've been bathing in this fallout. Like, I wake up in the morning and I brush my teeth with the fallout. It is just put it in my veins. Yeah.
Hey, that's great. See, it's already gearing up to be. It's gonna be good. I think it's gonna be good. All right, so we're gonna be covering the Austrian Grand Prix, Red Bull Ring, Spielberg, Austria. Not a lot happened. Max, I'm joking. All right. So before I even get into, you know what? No. What did you guys think about the race? Let's go ahead and get into it. We know what happened. I don't care who goes first. Whoever talks the loudest, doesn't really matter. What did y'all think about the return of Verstappen, who never left? The return of the Max. Okay, that was whack.
So for people that don't know, I am a huge McLaren stan.
Shout out McLaren.
Yep. Brucey boys, as I call them, my Brucey boys, the papayas. Super elated that Oscar got a podium. Super elated. Gutted. Absolutely gutted for what happened. Because it was literally what Charles Leclerc would call an incident, but it was it was literally. I have no words. I just. Yeah, disappointed with that turnout. Although we got a podium, I was disappointed for Lando as an individual.
All right, Didi.
If we turn to the scroll of Isaiah,
Jeremiah.
Crap,
here we go.
Jeremiah chapter 13, verse 23, and it says, "Can the leopard change his spots?" The Lord is warning us here, okay, that sometimes things are just ingrained and they don't change, okay? And I wish that people understood that this didn't start at Austria.
No.
Sure.
George, I'm excluding you from the McLaren fans that I'm directing this message to. This isn't specific to Austria. No, Max doesn't have an issue with Lando specifically. Max just doesn't like it when he can see someone who is equal in speed to him and they beat him in any way, shape, or form. If he doesn't rate you, he'll be like, ah. And then the one time I went back today, I did some research and I watched the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix where Charles Leclerc did a three-piece on Max Verstappen, as I say it.
Yep,
he passed him 3 times. And in that race, what I realized was Max knew that Charles was faster. Charles was catching him a second per lap every single time he passed him. And Max was relatively tame. He didn't really do much to defend because he knew he had no hope against Charles at that race. In 2019, when Max literally did the exact same thing that Lando did to him on lap 63, where he bumped him off the track, Charles had to go off track. Max kept the line. He was on the inside. When that happened, I remember 2 things. Number one, no one said anything. Martin Brundle called it hard but fair racing. How funny that you change your tune now. But let's just keep going. And then the second thing I want to say, I got to be brief here, is The very next race after the Austrian Grand Prix of 2019, watch the British Grand Prix highlights of 2019. You will see a Charles Leclerc who doesn't take prisoners against Max Verstappen. And into Stowe, which is the fastest corner, one of the fastest corners of the track, Max is ahead into the corner on the inside, and Charles comes from the outside. Sorry, Charles is on the outside. Charles goes on the inside, and Charles just takes the corner like it's his, like there's nobody there. And that's how you have to drive against Max. Charles has been doing it since the karting days. Not everybody has because Max went his own way.
Mm-hmm.
So
George, you weren't here last week, right? And I'm going to preface this by saying there are a lot in my inner circle who are also McLaren stands, especially those near and dear to me. Last week, me and Didi we were actually clowning on Lando. So we said out of the two, Oscar, he's got that dog in him. And I love Oscar Jack Piastri, the most underrated, hilarious guy on the grid. He's yold. And what I mean is he's young old. He looks young and old at the same time. He's yold, but he's so cool and calm under pressure. And you know he makes good decisions because he left Alpine when Alpine was playing around, right? Now, last week, George, we said that Lando did not, he doesn't have that dog in him, and we don't think Max rated him because post-race, you saw Max trying to tell Lando, you just got to do this, that, and the third. And we're just like, if this was truly someone he rated, right, he wouldn't be doing that. Him and Lewis, arguably, when they were fighting against each other, standoffish, right? You've seen in the past people who actually, they know I got to be tough against this guy. They're not buddies, right? You think about Senna Prost, you think about, right? But my question before we get into that entire incident is, I believe Max is basically bringing the dog out of Lando. I think Lando understands now that if you got to beat Max, you have to basically go at him like he goes at you, because I feel like Max just doesn't care. Literally, I think he's just kind of like, either we're going to crash, and I'm okay with that. I think you have more to lose, especially now because he's still leading the championship, right? Or you're going to cede the corner to me. Now, ultimately, his maturity, apparently he hasn't matured, right? Because Lando was already facing a track limits penalty. So obviously hindsight is 2020. The team is saying, whatever, you maybe should have let him pass. Max, his credit says, I'm not here for second. I'm here to win. If people aren't cool with that, whatever. So I guess the question to both of you, and I'm going to start with you, George, do you feel like, and obviously I'm sure you watched the post race, what Lando was saying, right? Like, hey, if he feels like he did nothing wrong, I've lost all respect for him. Is that friendship done? Or do you feel like it'll be fine, but now Lando knows what to expect and is now going to, basically like what Didi was saying, he's going to do a Charles 2019 post any incidents and say, all right, Max.
That's a great question. We all know that off the track, the drivers have completely different personalities, although you can argue that some of that personality off track bleeds onto track, sure. AKA Max Verstappen.
Sure.
But I don't see that friendship deteriorating anytime soon, and here's why. Lando, when he was racing with Carlos, okay, there was a good camaraderie there, but when they would race each other on track, they would race hard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was actually clear to me that Carlos was the number one driver at McLaren at the time, by the way. Just going to put that out there.
Okay.
And obviously he went to Ferrari. But Lando, I don't think is going to have any bitter feelings towards Max about this incident. Because if you also watch the interview that Max did, I was kind of reading like his micro expressions of how he was, presenting the whole incident. It sounded like there was a little bit of fault in his voice, like he knew that he was in the wrong. And on top, he wasn't taking full blame, but because he put a lot of the blame also on the team, which is another thing, right? With what happened in the pit.
Oh yeah, that slow pit stop. Right?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, it was like
And
6.3 seconds. Yeah.
I don't particularly see anything changing. I think that they are probably going to just keep it pushing, and just show up to work and race. Like, hey, keep it copacetic and just keep it going because we still got a job to do, at least on that end. I think Lando's pretty good with separating that. So that's my take on that.
Didi, what do you think? Because I have my own thoughts.
I love you, George. George, I love you. But I disagree so hard that it's kind of crazy. I think the issue here stems from the fact Lando has a support system. He hasn't availed himself of it in a long time, but his support system is George Russell and Alex Albon. Those are the original homies. Those are the people that he was doing all the press with his first season and the second season, and they just clown around with each other because they've known each other for so long. So I don't think Lando has to continue being his friend, being like super close with Max. And I don't think you didn't say that. But I think their friendship. I think Max is petty, extremely petty. If you don't believe me, watch what happened right after the puncture. That was worse than the puncture. For me, what happened right after the contact was actually worse than the contact itself.
Wait, I missed it. Wait. What happened?
Max drove Lando off the track. Max veered right, and I was watching.
Yeah.
I was watching the onboards. By the way, guys, I've done all the research. I've watched lap 54 to 64. Onboard him, onboard Max. I mean Lando. The international feed, the F1 live feed, everything. Max was actually looking in his mirror as he was turning right, and Lando. He knew Lando was there, and Lando was trying to go on the inside. He didn't know he had a puncture as well, and Max took him to the grass. So, anyway, I think Max had a moment of red, like just lost his cool. I don't think I will say the friendship, I think the friendship will be strained because, the only guy that, kind of was like, he's not so bad is now realizing if you go against him, he is so bad. He is gonna make sure that he doesn't finish second, that he finishes sixth.
But doesn't it have to be that way though? So think about like Lewis. So I'm going to start with Lewis, then think about Michael, think about Senna, think about Prost, think about all the people who've won consecutive championships. How many people on the grid were they like truly from? I'm talking about they were friends with them like on and off the grid.
Senna. The thing about Senna was that Senna, I was talking about this with a friend of mine. Senna had a big heart, but not when it mattered. Like, there's this incident in 1992 where Senna is seen, a driver crashes out of Blanchimont at Spa in a practice, and the guy is sitting like this in his car. Senna sees him as he's driving by, stops the car in the middle of the track, gets out, and goes to check on the guy. Everybody's like, wow, oh my gosh, what a heart. Two things. Number one, there was no competition happening at that point. It was a practice, number one. Number two, you go to 1990, Suzuka, turn one against Alain Prost, and the humanity and the sainthood of Senna quickly vanishes.
Adios.
Because he just takes somebody off the track on purpose. He wasn't even close to where he was supposed to be, and just said, I don't care. We're not going to finish this race. I'm going to be champion.
And so
what happened with Max at Austria wasn't that. I don't see any deliberate. We'll get into it. But I will say every F1 driver has been ruthless. The dominant ones have been ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't look,
but I think
I'm a Ferrari guy, but I don't see that in Lewis. I don't see that in Lewis.
I hear you, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that on the grid, Max and Lando are friendly. They say they're friends. They do the whole PR tour. Everybody's playing like paddleboard or whatever. What's it called now?
Yeah. Paddle.
Old tennis. Geriatric tennis. I said what I said. It's my podcast.
Yeah, geriatric tennis.
And so like for me, I think that Max didn't truly have. I think his friends is actually his family, like his dad, his mom, Kelly Piquet. But I will say, so George, I agree with you half, and I agree with Didi half, and I'm only gonna say it like this, right? Lando got his first win, his first victory, obviously this year in Miami.
Home race, baby.
I think that now that he understands that feeling and he knows what it feels like, I think he's definitely changed since Miami, right? I think Lando is more aggressive now than he was prior to that first victory. And what I mean by that is like, hey, I got to do what it takes. He's not as hard on himself as he was before that first victory, but now he knows, okay, this is what I got to do to win. It's got to be near perfect, blah, 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 blah. Right.
But there's also a pressure. There's also a pressure that Lando has now because he has never had a car.
And
to
this
compete.
is the
never.
I want to. Okay, so do you all agree that McLaren has the best car on the grid right now?
Yeah.
Especially
on low fuel.
I would say, dude, if they're handing it to the Red Bulls right now, like it's very clear that we're back. And I'm gonna try to come at this as objectively as possible. Minus my McLaren bias. No, seriously, because I see what you guys are also saying about Lando being more aggressive now. However, this is going to be my hot take. And as a McLaren fan, Lando, I think, is just coming to grips with the task that he has.
Like realizing what it
takes. He's still
takes.
Warming up to the idea that, oh crap, I actually have good machinery that can hand it to the Red Bulls. And this weekend was a prime example of that. The problem was, again, like Crash Stappen, right? The whole time I was thinking to myself, this reminds me of McLaren when Mika Hakkinen was in it and Kimi, and like they were just like doing really well, you know? And so I'm thinking to myself that he hasn't come to it fully. I think he's at about maybe 80%. I personally believe that come the time that Baku comes around, full like send, like it's gonna just go all the way to the end.
Baku's 2 races from now, right? Because Silverstone and then Hungary, or no?
No, Baku is way after. It's like
September.
It's after Monza this year for some reason. Usually Baku is in like May, but they switched it over to bring Suzuka out of the monsoon season to April, and that's why Suzuka was so early.
Which is why I said Baku, because I think that by the time that we're starting to end the summer, McLaren is going to have good footing on the car.
I just hope that for McLaren's sake, Ferrari and Mercedes haven't joined the party, because I feel like let's go. Imola was when you first really started saying, ooh, dang, okay, Max got to work for his lunch, right? Obviously, after Imola was Monaco, and you saw Oscar qualified second, which the world's most expensive car per session is Monaco. I don't want to get into that. I think it should stay, but some things got to change, right? But I guess the point I'm trying to make is like earlier in the season, Lando, and I'm paraphrasing here, was saying it's a good day when you finish second if Max Verstappen has won the race. I'm paraphrasing it terribly, but essentially for me, it was like a big letdown, because it was like, dog, why do you want to finish second? Like, just win. Who cares? Like, it's a good day. Like, you gave it to all. Yeah. And so my point is, like, we're getting to that point of the season, right? Where it's like the car is good now, Lando. Do you have what it takes? Because I think, especially now after Austria, he understands Max is not just going to be like, I'm going to be respectful. Yeah, sure, Lando, I'm going to cede because you clearly have the corner. Like, I think Lando is now understanding like what it's going to take to actually beat Max, because it's not just the fastest car.
There's just also some context that we need here, which is this is the Austrian Grand Prix. This is Red Bull's home race. True. Max was going to do everything he possibly could to win that race for the factory, for the brand, because up until the Dutch Grand Prix was put on the calendar, the Austrian Grand Prix was his home race, basically. Sure. Austria and Belgium and Spa, because of the proximity. So Max Max reverted to an old way of driving that Lando wasn't prepared for. But Lando, I don't think Lando will see this as, well, I'm just a guy who's trying to make it and trying to get past Max. You cannot get into that car and risk your life if you don't think you're faster than him.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot get into the car psychologically, put the helmet on, and go wheel to wheel against someone that you truly believe you are not faster than. And so for Lando was trying to get past Max Verstappen in a race that Max Verstappen was desperate to win. And we have seen what desperation does to Max Verstappen in an F1 championship. We have seen it. We have the receipts. So I think Lando doesn't care about the narrative, about friendships.
Not
I think
anymore.
truly at the end of the day, he has to look into the mirror and say, I'm going up against a guy who I was friendly with, but if I'm going to beat him, I'm going to beat him. And he's the one that doesn't take losing well. He's the one that takes losing really badly.
And so I'll tell you, I resonate with Verstappen on two accounts. One, I'm also a super petty person, right? The worst times. Second, I'm a sore loser. So obviously y'all know playing intramurals, you do like the handshake line after you lose. I hated doing that. If my team lost, it was like, oh, okay, dog. Now I got to shake your hand here, and then I'm gonna see you in my art class like the next day and act like it's all cool. All right. So
you have someone in mind. I can tell. There's someone you're thinking in your mind.
He exists there. Yeah. And it was after
he exists.
Anyways, people who anyway.
I wanna put something out there. Technically, the next two races I'm looking at the calendar are Orlando home races. Great Britain and Hungary. Just gonna put that out there.
You know, this is completely random aside. I thought Lando was Latino. I'm not gonna hold y'all because whenever people were like Lando Norris from Great Britain, I was like, he is too dark. He's got a tan. Are you sure he's not Hispanic? He's not Puerto Rican?
Yeah, I know
Puerto Rican. He's been looking like a Puerto Rican,
Puerto Rican.
And so, all right, so George sent me a clip. I'd seen the clip, but it's a good one, and I think both of you are gonna walk me through this. Hold my hand as I embark on this journey. I'm gonna start with George. So George, what you sent me, I'd seen post race on Twitter and stuff, which was, did Max see Lando? Obviously, Didi talked about he saw all the onboards and the secret ones that nobody knows about.
I have things to say about this.
And so George, and then Didi, and then everybody, like, what do you think? What'd you make of it when it was that angle that you sent me? It seemed extremely obvious what Max was trying to do, and then he got the prenda. So, like, what do you feel? Like, what was Max thinking? And like, we have cameras, dog. We know that was on purpose. Anyway.
Bueno, Maxito did not. He got off the line for the apex, bro. It's clear there. It's pretty clear. And so el tipo se fue para acá, and then Lando was like, "What are you doing, bro?" And then that's it. So that angle, a friend of mine sent me that video, and I was like, "It's clear as day that it was intentional." And I still think. You still think? Go ahead. Keep
that
going. 10-second penalty is light.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Okay,
don't give me that 10-second penalty nonsense.
That's BS. I'm with
let's
you,
back
George.
Let's back up. Because lap 54, Max pits, guys. I don't remember off the top of my head many times that Red Bull makes a mistake in a pit.
Oh yeah, that was a bad pit,
bro.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the last time in a battle for a race that Max Verstappen goes into the pits and Red Bull gives him a slow pit stop, he ended up on top of Lewis Hamilton at turn 2 at Monza.
My boy DR3.
Because that same thing happened. Max had a bad pit stop. Lewis comes out from the pits way too close to him. Max dive bombs around the outside and ends up on top of Lewis. Max doesn't react well to Red Bull letting him down on a pit stop. It's just, that's a This is. I know it's only 2 examples, but
it's so rare. They're surgical with those pit
so
stops.
rare, so rare. And I actually at Spain, I think they did a double stack, and I watched the double stack 23 times, just on repeat on Instagram, like just watching the
poetry in motion,
the poetry in motion, really, of Red Bull pit stops. A double stack where they each were 2.2 seconds long, dude. No one does that.
They ate, bro.
So lap 55, Lando took a page out of Sir Lewis Hamilton's book. Max is vulnerable to little feints. I don't know if you noticed this or remembered this at Brazil 2021. The reason why Lewis was able to set up Max for the pass down that back straight was because he feinted on Max just a smidge. And Max reacted so hard, he went too far into the first corner and was out of sync for the next 2. And Lewis was right on him and got closer to the point where the DRS was so strong that by the time he got to the corner, the whole car was ahead of Max, and he had already cut him off. So Lando knows Max doesn't like little feints. He lives in his rearview mirrors when he is defending. It's where he lives. Okay. So he does a little feint. Max reacts to it. Max is now doing something that is literally against the rules, and it's a rule that was created because of him. It's called the Max Verstappen rule.
Yeah.
Okay?
Moving under braking.
Where you cannot move under braking. By the way, 2018, Daniel Ricciardo at Baku would like to have a chat. But anyway, okay, because it's the same exact thing. Max, 2018, Max goes to brake for turn 1, starts to go out, but he sees Daniel go in, and then Max turns into... That's the same thing that Max has been doing for the longest time. So finally, at the end of 2021, they made a rule that you can't move erratically under braking. That is what Lando is talking about when he says he can't move, he can't react to what I'm doing.
Correct.
You decide, I'm going to defend the inside or I'm going to defend the outside. But you can't change your mind when you see what the other driver is going to do. Because then you're going to cause an accident. He did it exactly. That's the second thing. Lap 55, he did it. Lap 59, so lap 59 is the one where Lando dive bombs on the inside. Max, he doesn't make the corner. Neither does Max, because Max is trapped on the outside of Lando. And everybody was like, yeah, that's not, he has to give that position back to Max because he took it illegally. He went off track. And Lando said something in the radio that then GP, Max's race engineer, was like, not sure how Lando thinks it's your fault. Here's what happened. And if you watch the onboard, when Lando goes for the dive bomb, Max reacts again.
Yeah.
So Max was gonna take the geometric line, go a little bit further out, and then take his corner. But when he sees that Lando dive bombs, Max reacts, and you see him turn the steering wheel erratically towards the inside. What does that do? That makes Lando have to turn himself a little bit more than he planned. And what does that do? When Lando is now coming to the corner at a sharper angle, Lando's never going to make the corner because Max moved. Now, how much? It's tough to say. But Lando has a point there. I saw it and I was like, no, Lando, you were never. That's a classic Max Verstappen dive bomb in 2021. But then when I actually watched it, Lewis never changed direction under braking when Max was dive bombing him at Saudi Arabia. Max just didn't make the corner because he was just doing the actual most. And Lewis would actually turn out and be like, I know you're going to go in. Go, dale, please, And here with Lando wasn't expecting Max to kind of, and so Lando reacts, and that's why Lando missed the corner. It made the corner sharper by going further in for him. That's why he missed the apex completely. That's lap 59. Okay. Lap 61, Max decides, okay, I'm going to move, I'm going to defend the outside, and I'm going to carry the speed. By the way, guys, Max was getting the most insane drives, traction-wise, out of turn 3 to turn 4. Austria is a very peculiar track. It's the only track in the F1 calendar with 3 consecutive DRS straights. Consecutive. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And usually, when you don't get the pass done at turn 3, you set up for turn 4. Lando had no hope for turn 4 because Max was getting out of the corner. Lando had DRS and he was being gapped by Max into turn 4. That's crazy. So 61, He moves in a more organic way, the way that everybody expects him to. He defends the outside, takes the corner, whatever. Lap 63. This is the one where Lando goes on the inside, makes the corner, and Max has already selected the gear he wants before he even goes off track to just accelerate like he's on the racing line, like as normal, even though he's off the track, and rejoin the track. Again, Max moved again. He reacted again. But this is a textbook Max Verstappen pass. For Max to then say, I don't know what you want me to do, you cannot. He literally says that, and I quote, he says, it's dive bombing. It's not how you overtake. El burro hablando de orejas, my dog. Okay? So if you are going to tell me that a textbook pass that you orchestrated so many times to win a championship, arguably, when it comes against you, dog, this is the fate. When Andrea Stella said this is because of the unpunished incidents with Max in 2021 with Lewis, Andrea Stella doesn't realize that he's also talking about his own driver, because he's talking about a precedent that Max brought into F1 that no one else was doing before him. Maybe Kevin Magnussen, because he's an absolute nutter.
Yeah.
But not fighting for a championship. But this is maneuvers that Max Verstappen introduced to F1 that now other drivers are availing themselves of, and it's because okay, let me save that for later. So we have the incident on lap 63. I know. I agree with you guys. I don't think Max touched Lando deliberately. I think it was a miscalculation, because you can have two cars on the outside of that where they had their cars. I think Max opened up too much because he was just trying to get the exit out of turn 3 into turn 4 to defend. That's why I think they had the collision. I don't think Max was like, we're going to hit here. But for me, the more egregious thing, I already said, the more egregious thing was after that, Lando and him touch. They rejoin the track. Lando goes on the inside to get by him, and Max just takes him to the grass. That to me is the one where Lando has to be like, that's how you really feel. That's who you really are. That's who you really are. You're petty, and you are a bully here, and you don't care, and you will do what you have to do. That's what I have to say.
I think. Honestly, Max should be beaten at his own game. I think that, frankly, it's not really necessary for somebody with his skill set, right? So Max is somebody that I've talked to in the past about, and Didi obviously knows. Like, I think Max is a generational talent, right? My feelings aside from him, like, he's generational. I don't think he had to do that at all. What I love about what happened in Austria is that it showed to the world, the last 2 years, Max hasn't had somebody to compete against. No car, especially the RB19. Especially the RB19 made it look like everyone was racing literal tractors, and he was in a freaking that car is beautiful, right? So yeah, they're like, now that, and you both know this, now that he's won his championship, he's matured. You're not going to see the desperate Max that you've seen in the past, but it's clear that the reason he was like that was because he had no competition. And now the competition's here, and it's like, oh yeah, he never went away. It's just that we saw the template of how to beat Max Verstappen is don't yield. Baku sprint race last year. George Russell put a hole into Max's car. Max didn't like it, but you got to give Max his own medicine. And Lewis, listen, y'all. I'm on fire right now, okay? Este tipo me tiene, I'm furious right now. Me tienes hasta acá, coño. Okay, like, this dude, for me, the contact wasn't the problem. For me, as Lando said several times, it was the movement under braking. You are not allowed to, you scare the other driver, and you can cause an accident. And guess what? We have had accidents with Max Verstappen. It's not just, it's just a Lando thing. No, dog. You weren't watching Silverstone. You weren't watching them. Yeah.
Okay? We can say that that's Lewis's fault. Whatever. You got to eventually you have to tell Max, look, I'm going to pass you. Mm-hmm. You cannot just hog the track to a way where you're driving dangerously, putting me at risk, putting other drivers at risk because you just don't want to cede the position. Yeah. You have to lose. You have to learn to lose. And here's the thing, and it's happened like the last 4 races. The McLaren is so good on low fuel in a race. Wow. Oh my goodness. That's like on heavy fuel, the Red Bull's a little bit faster at the beginning of the race when they have to do some tire saving. But on low fuel, especially, and this is why qualifying is so important, guys. You have to qualify well, but you cannot make mistakes. Because you cannot do a Q1 when you have 2 runs. No, dog. No. You do 1 run, and you say, Zhou Guanyu is not going to get me. So why am I going back out? Okay? Q2, same thing. You do 1 run, maybe 2. And Q3, you do 2 runs. And that way, you have some tires in the back pocket. And Lando did. Lando had brand new mediums. Max had used mediums. Probably the reason why Lando was so quick. And you have to, that's the other thing. And Emmy and I were talking about this last time. Like, you have to be perfect to beat Max. And by the way, I just want to say, this showcases the outrageous talent of Lewis Hamilton. Because in 2021, Lewis was on the money every time. Every time. He brought out the best out of Max, or the worst, or the best, whatever. But Lewis was on the money. In qualifying, he was just peerless. Then he gets an engine penalty and starts last in a sprint in Brazil, and then finishes the race, winning the full big thing. Like, yeah. And Lando's realizing, like, yo, this is a task. This is a crazy
goat
task.
stuff. Goat stuff.
Yeah.
And so, all right, putting a pin on it for a second, George. Let me ask you again. You can be unbiased. You can be biased. Where does McLaren go from here? Right? Because they have the best car, but Zach Brown was pissed. He was clearly pissed, right? Like,
Dude,
I want to see Zach Brown footage. I haven't seen any Zach Brown footage. I need to find it.
Yeah, he was not happy.
So I think that McLaren has a good chance to. I mean, it's only upwards from here, guys. I'll be honest. Like, I think it's only upwards because Zach Brown. There have been things in the past that he's done that are slightly questionable here and there, but overall, the upward trajectory has been going really well. They had a rough patch in 2020 and 2021, but 2022 and 23, the development of the car, especially with the new regulations, which is another thing. These new regs that are going to be kicking in 2026, is it?
Yeah, 26, yep.
These new regs, that's going to change everything. Again. And so, like, I think with what Zach Brown has been doing with the team overall, first of all, they got 2 young drivers. Second, like, their team has been on the money with the development of the car.
Especially now that they've figured out the correlation between, hey, why are we so fast?
Yes. The biggest thing that I am concerned about.
Why are we so fast?
They didn't know, dog. Hey, that's real talk. Look back at the quotes.
The only thing that I would be concerned about is if they become a little stagnant, which I doubt, but it is a possibility. They become stagnant in the fact that, like, their car is getting faster and faster. So I think we could just keep this going. But I don't think that's going to happen. It's a point to think about. But I think that with what Zach Brown has been doing with the team overall, I think the trajectory is always up. Because when they were P3 in the Constructors in 2019, that was like a big shocker to a lot of people. Remember, when Nando was in McLaren in 2016, 17, and 18, they were
GP2 engine.
Bro,
engine.
I'm not gonna sit here and let you guys talk about a world class hater like Fernando Alonso. All right.
Listen, bro.
Listen, bro. At the race, when Esteban Ocon literally Max Verstappen him, and the quote comes out, "Wow." I'm like, yes, 100%. Esteban Ocon is insane because he didn't block him into a corner. He blocked him in the middle of a straight with DRS. Like, this is extremely dangerous driving. When I'm punished, by the way.
He's got to channel his inner K-Mag because he's going to be in Haas next year, so it all makes sense. So So George, to summarize then, so what you're saying is McLaren is the trajectory is up. They've got two strong drivers. The car development is looking great. So really, they're their own worst enemy at this point, right?
That's
they
what
have
I'm
all
saying.
the tools.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like they have 2 years to get it done before the new regs kick in, right? So if I don't know if this year is a wash or if it's too late. Clearly, I feel like the constructors is not shooing. Like I feel more confident about saying Red Bull is not going to win the constructors because they have one driver. I said what I said. It's my biased podcast. Because how is it that Max Verstappen was racing on 3 wheels and still ended up finishing in front of Checo Perez? And I get that Checo had like a huge hole in his side pod. Come on, dog. He had Max Verstappen did an entire lap on 3 tires before pitting and getting the change and still finish ahead of Checo. That's a different story. So for me, it's a situation where I feel like McLaren has a good chance for sure to win the constructors because they have 2 competent drivers. If the trajectory is going and now Lando kind of got a taste of this is what it's like when you're racing with the big boys, then I feel like there's still 9? No, wait. Yeah, we just got them through 11. Well, I can't math. There's like 13 races left, basically.
Yeah.
So it could all change, right? Championship leads change, right? Especially if McLaren keeps going at the rate that they're going, right? I feel like next year is the last year before. Again, I'm not confident that McLaren can keep this going into the 2026 regulations because it's engines, right? I know they're a customer team to Mercedes, but Mercedes excels engines. Ferrari excels engines. Red Bull is asking for rule changes because their build for tough engines are not going to be able to be up to the task. So I guess like for me, if anything, so here's my take. My takeaway is that Lando learned firsthand what it's going to take. It's not just the fastest car. Now you know that you're really truly racing against a maniac. He's not a Fernando Alonso. He's not a Lewis Hamilton. So I mentioned 2 greats in F1, but he's not even a Charles Leclerc who has that history of Max going back to their karting days, right? But I feel like this was a good learning. This weekend was a good learning for Lando Norris. One with the sprint race, the stupid sprint. I hate sprints. I know y'all. Maybe you guys like sprints.
I know. I don't care for the sprints either, bro. I don't care for them.
Lando knows. We all know he opportunity wasted. Made the overtake. Left the door. I was messaging Didi. Left that door wide open. All right. And so great learning for Lando. The one person just side, and then we're gonna switch for the next thing. I did kind of feel bad for Oscar Piastri. I do feel like the track limits, and it's a good segue into the next thing. The track limits kind of did him dirty, and I think obviously Oscar would have qualified P3, and rightfully so. And I feel like especially now that they added like the gravel, and this is something that people kept talking about all weekend, right? They added that gravel to prevent people going off track because hey, you don't gain it.
The debacle that was the qualifying last year.
But I feel like if you have the gravel now and it's new to prevent that, then let's get rid of track limit. Is it really so? Again, and maybe this is naive of me. Is it really an advantage if I went off track, gone to the gravel, came back on track? Like for me, like if you, in spite of that, if you're still able to put in a good lap even after going into a gravel. And this is the dad in me that says participation award. You should give him that lap. Anyways, I felt like Oscar's lap shouldn't have been deleted. I understand why it was, so I'm not disagreeing the reason, right? Because he did exceed track limits. I just feel like now that you have the gravel, I'm going to call it the gravel trap. Okay, let's go ahead and do away with track limits, right?
So the only thing I'll say is they left a little bit of that blue runoff on the exit of turn, I want to say 6 and turn 7. The value of going out as far as possible, especially when you're exiting a corner, is momentum. And Austria is a momentum track because you make the turn less sharp if when you exit you can get on the power sooner, and actually you just carry more momentum. Should you get it anyway? You know, I think you have a point there, but there is a margin. There's a gray line. There's a little space where it becomes an advantage because you're really taking a lot more curb. A lot of the drivers, you would see it in turn 1, as they were approaching turn 1, they would drift really far left, Why? Well, because the shallower you make the radius of the turn, the more speed you can carry down that long straight that goes uphill. And so you want to carry as much speed as possible. One of the things that Lando did really well in his battle with Max was his turn ones were really good. I mean, he was coming out squirrely, and you love to see the car just dancing, but he was getting it done out of turn one, so he had the DRS in the right window for himself. Something that we didn't talk about that was very interesting was there's a DRS game that Max discovered a long time ago in 2021, and that is if you're just slightly behind the car you're trying to pass as you cross over the DRS detection line, you get DRS in the next straight, and possibly if you get the pass done, you can then be in front with DRS. And Max did this to Checo last year at the Austrian Grand Prix. There's a video circling the internet where it's like Max schools Checo on DRS, and it's 100% true because Checo couldn't defend to Max, and I don't know if you remember, but like he had trouble getting past Sainz last year. Sainz repassed him 3 times because of this, because Sainz knew if you just let him get to the DRS detection line into turn 3 before me, I can still get DRS in the following straight, even though I'm next to him. And that happened a lot. And so Max, I'm surprised that Max and Lando didn't play that game. Max plays games when he's desperate, like Saudi Arabia. He'll play games when he's desperate. 2021.
I mean,
so yeah, surprised they didn't do that.
I'll be, me and everybody else is gonna be watching Lando and Max, and I'm hoping that they meet again next weekend or this upcoming weekend at that race that opens it up for Mercedes in the 44 car to win. I don't know. It's probably not going to happen. It's a good segue. So, okay.
It's Silverstone, man. A lot of things can happen, bro.
Your lips to God's ears.
Through goes Hamilton is still the greatest call in F1 radio history. I think broadcast history. Through goes Hamilton, and then you hear the crowd over the cars. Chills.
Exactly.
Thank you, Crofty.
And so, okay, so that's a good segue. I asked both of you this question right now. Accident happened. I think we're all in agreement it was Max Verstappen's fault, right? And by the way, I'm not going to let slip by 2 things. One, George, 100,000% I agree with you. 10 seconds, that is not enough. We really got to teach a lesson here. And by the way, your TP had, I think, the best first line of a quote. The whole world, everyone in this world could see, or whatever. It was like hilarious. I was like, Andrea,
except for one group of people.
Bravissimo.
He said the whole world knew except for one group of people what happened. And I'm just sitting there like, Andrea, here's why we had you at Ferrari until a couple of years ago. Because you are the man. I like you. I like you.
And so incident happens. George. So I'm not going to go and talk about this a lot because I think I'll go off on a tangent. George Russell is there to clean up after the accident. wins the race. Here's some stats for people who love stats. First, Lewis Hamilton has not won a race since 2021. All right, has not won a race.
Since
I think they had a graphic.
Saudi Arabia 2021.
Yeah, since Saudi. Yeah, that's a good one.
Extremely painful. All right. But the last 2 race wins from Mercedes have come, forget the qualifying, forget the points head to head, Lewis finished ahead of George. The last 2 victories from Mercedes have come at the hands of George Russell. I believe, here's the excuse that I make as a Lewis Hamilton fan. Excuse number 1 for 2022. He had an incident with Max where Max did not relent, and Max said, I don't care. He's going to be more affected by it than me. I don't really care. So I think that tiny little damage, maybe whatever. This other one, actually, I have no excuse except for Lewis needs to sort out his qualifying because, frankly, Didi's right. And I think, George, you would agree. Like, if you're qualifying 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, your entire race is going to be like hoping for a time safety car, an amazing start, or that the front runners run into some engine problems, right? So to summarize now, my question, I'm going to start with you, George. George Russell, we can rate George Russell, or he's just right place. Right, I mean, for sure, this race, right place, right time. But I'll say at the beginning of the race, Lewis, I think, was a little bit too happy to pass George, and then Didi just talked about that DRS game. George was able to regain it, and off he went. Lewis had some damage, whatever. But is George Russell the real deal or just fortuitous?
Oh man, I think I go. I have my days where I think he's great, and I have my days where I'm like, whatever, you know. George, to me, I've always seen George as just like, okay, good driver, like he's solid. He's good at what he does. For this race, I was like, oh, okay, well, he's gonna win a race, and that's that. I didn't see it necessarily as a display of skill,
Same,
for lack of better
Same.
word.
No, full agreement.
I think that this was more of a lucky thing, but I can't help. I'm sorry, guys. I know we're talking about Georgia, but I can't help but think about Daniel Ricciardo's win in Monza in 2021.
Same exact thing.
Same exact thing.
Identical.
Identical. Max and Lewis go at it, and Daniel takes the lead for a 1-2 podium finish. I was relishing in that, but then I had to reflect on it and think about Daniel was in the right place at the right time, and that happened, and boom, boom, boom. I'm saying this 3 years after the fact.
By the way, same thing 2020, Monza. Pierre Gasly wins his first F1
Pierre,
race.
yeah.
The fact that Charles ends up going off camera at the exit of Parabolica into a wall, and no one else had anything for Pierre Gasly. But that's besides this point. But yeah, so I'm with you. That it was the right place, right time. Can we talk about some skill?
For who?
For George.
Oscar Piastri.
Oh, Oscar.
Yeah, Oscar Jack Piastri Leclerc, yes.
One of the
Don't
dopest
piss me off,
I've
bro.
ever seen
Disgusting.
in my life. Outside turn 5, no one passes there. Outside, well, it does happen, but it's rare. Outside turn 5 on a Ferrari, and just kept going like it didn't matter.
Yeah.
That's the
Hey,
first
but who
thing.
was
Second
it?
thing is, does Oscar Piastri have eyes around corners? Because how the hell, dog, in a split second did you see a tire mark that Lewis left with his rear left tire going into the pit and say, I think Lewis crossed the line. I'm like, bro, what kind of eagle eyes do you got, bro? Like, this is ridiculous.
So he's old, bro.
But thank you, George. Yes. Patent pending. He is old.
I love it.
First thing I will say is Oscar. So I love Oscar Jack Piastri Leclerc. All right. Love that guy. Right.
I love that kid.
You notice who the pass was against, though?
Carlos Sainz.
He does not rate Carlos Sainz. I don't care. Carlos is trying to spin it as some kind of PR thing, but go back to Miami. Go back to Austria last year. No, go back further. Go back further last year because Carlos got a little spicy with Oscar. So Carlos made a mistake, right? Instead of owning up to the mistake, and I would have done the same thing as Carlos, he said, it's probably because of Oscar's inexperience. Like they always end up meeting, and earlier they met in Miami. And so for me, out of those two, Oscar Piastri is a better driver to me than Carlos Sainz. All right. Maybe that's premature. Maybe that's recency bias. But the thing for me is
look,
I'm more willing to say yes. Go ahead.
Did you watch Oscar's F2 season? His last one? So there's been two drivers that have wiped the floor with F2 in their last season. The first guy that I watched was a guy that you may have heard of, Lord Percival himself, Charles Leclerc. He wiped. There was a race where Charles pitted on purpose with 5 laps to go. Went last. Not 5 laps, like 15 laps or something. Went last. He was leading at Bahrain. Went last and on new tires past the entire field and won the race. It was winning for fun. And the second guy was Oscar Piastri. Piastri was unreal in his last season in F2. Oscar Piastri is really fast. People just don't see it because he's next to Lando. He's not a team leader. But Oscar is just, great driver.
I don't think he has to be a team leader, but I think by 2026, to me, Lando's got his work cut out for him because I think right now Oscar is learning real tire management because his tire management is buns. All right. And he's got to learn to be a little bit more aggressive because even when people do stuff to Oscar, he's like, yep, that probably shouldn't have, or whatever he says. He's just like, wait, I'm like, oh, God. Anyways, and so like, yes, I feel like that pass was great. And it was hilarious to me. It's not going to slip by that it was against Carlos Sainz. That's why I say, like, I don't think Oscar rates Carlos. I think he's like, hey, bro, why don't you go ahead and take this next season off since you don't want to be – Mercedes didn't want you. Ferrari didn't want you. Red Bull don't want you. Now Williams is probably shutting the door. The fact that Franco Colapinto is testing now, are they going to bring Franco Colapinto? Just go to Audi, Carlos Sainz, all right? I'm not gonna say it in Spanish because whatever, but go to Audi. That's it. All right, bro. Just go. You're gonna be in Sauber. Yeah, just you're done. Yeah. All right, because people are linking you to Haas, to Williams, to Audi. You're not. Anyway,
well, the dark horse is Alpine, as I talked to you guys last time. The dark horse is Alpine. Well, yeah, because that's a team
Alpine's gonna be tight.
He went to McLaren from, and apparently Alpine's gonna get Mercedes engines. They're just like, look,
I thought they were gonna get.
We get
I thought
it.
They were getting
Our
Ferrari
engines is trash. No, they're literally, if you watch The Race on YouTube, it's a YouTube channel called The Race. It's an excellent channel about all the news.
Yeah.
There's now reports that Renault, that Alpine's pitch to Carlos Sainz is, we'll get Mercedes engines. Yeah, come on. We'll get Mercedes engines. And here's the thing, guys. Mercedes doesn't sleep on rule changes with engines. If 2014 is anything to go by, there were times where Mercedes would turn down the engine and still be a second faster per lap than everybody else. Mercedes is not going to be caught sleeping a second time. They got caught sleeping with the porpoising in 2022. So 2026, that engine is going to be astronomically fast. And so you say, hey, Carlos, come on, we have the Mercedes. Come on.
I just feel like you say that too, but I feel like maybe Lewis also saw something that Fred Vasseur showed him, and that's why he is like, hey, this is going to be great for me. Ferrari's cooking up something decent.
Let's talk about my boys. We talked about McLaren a lot. Let's talk about my boys.
Yeah, what
so
the
apparently...
Heck? Yeah, right.
So apparently,
you saved the shirt taking off moment for the wrong thing. You should have waited until we were talking about Ferrari.
I just listen. Here's what's happening. Apparently, the updates have brought more downforce. They brought more downforce. But here's the thing with a car. A car is like a camera. When you add one thing, you gotta subtract from another place, and it's just a balancing act. If you add aperture, if you open up your aperture, well, George knows this. Well, if you open up your aperture, you either gotta bring your ISO down or you gotta make your f-stop. your shutter speed faster because you're gonna have a really bright image. Right. Same thing with the F1 car.
Checks and balances.
If you introduce more downforce to the car, now there's more load on the suspension, and apparently they are getting bouncing, not just bouncing, but like instability of the suspension at high speed turns. And so it's like that's what's happening right now in Ferrari, okay? Because it's ridiculous. Like, come on. And the thing is, Carlos can live with a car that he cannot predict. He just drives it as fast as he can. Charles doesn't drive like Carlos. Charles is not reactive. Charles manipulates. If the car is not doing what he wants it to do, he doesn't have the confidence to put it through a corner the way he normally does, because then he'll end up in a wall like, I don't know, France 2022. So, like, it happens, and this is why Carlos has been a little bit quicker these past couple races, is because these updates have actually hindered Charles's ability to trust the car, whereas Carlos, when the cars are perfect, Charles is faster. But when the cars are not perfect, Carlos is faster. 100%.
So you open this door, Didi, and you'll understand what I mean in a second.
Up a can of worms,
by bringing the Bible into this. I feel like did Ferrari to sell its soul to get that win in Monaco for Charles? And then it's like, okay,
bro, that was the false dawn that Monaco was, because it's so convenient. If I just have, if my attachments can just be bigger to the point where they drag on the ground through the corners, and I can just get through the corners faster than everybody else and not crash, I'll be on pole. And then I'm going to win the race. Like, Charles has never really crashed a Ferrari at Monaco in the race. So, it was a false dawn, 100% a false dawn. Piastri had way more pace than Charles. He just couldn't use it because it's Monaco. So Silverstone, we got to talk about Silverstone. The things that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to press day because you better believe they're probably going to put Max and Lando
100 times
at the press day on Thursday. I want to see it.
So real quick on the press, actually. So again, I know both of you are watching that coverage. It was, I will give Lando this credit. He was saying all the spicy stuff about Max while Max was standing right next to him, doing his own interview. I was like,
right there. That was crazy. I will say, I did not think he had the pelotas for that. I'm not going to lie. I was like, dang, you're blowing up his spot right next to him.
No, bro.
Respect that.
Number one. Has it, bro.
Number two, Lando. I don't know if Lando knew that this is Max Verstappen. Like, I don't even know if he knew. He knows now. Yeah, I don't care if you're my friend. I'm going to put you off the track if it means I win the race. So sure. I think Silverstone is going to be Silverstone is probably the most exciting race of the season just because of how fast the track is, how wide the track is. Every turn has so much space for you to try to pull off a crazy move. It's an excellent track. If it doesn't rain, it'll be so much fun to watch. And I think, hot take, McLaren wins this race.
Ooh, George, you hoping for a McLaren win? Well,
dude,
obviously.
I mean, always. But man, like, yes. But I do think that I feel like it's like I mentioned earlier. Great Britain and Hungary are Lando's home races because he's Hungarian and British. There's going to be a lot of hype, right? So that's one thing. But I also think that Max is going to be Max. And he is going to be all elbows out. And he's going to continue trying to do what he just did like this last weekend. Okay? And that is that's going to be the biggest Achilles heel, if you will, for McLaren for the rest of the season. Because Max, like you were saying, Didi, Max does not take pressure well. And Max, when he's under pressure, he's going to be erratic. Like Carlos Sainz says, he's driving erratically, right? Okay? The guy is going to be ruthless. And that's why they call him the Lion, right? Okay? He is, I know. Listen, I know. But the point is that Max is going to be the biggest challenge for not just Lando, but McLaren as a team. Okay. I'm putting Max there because at this point, he's just Red Bull. He is Red Bull.
I think, look, I think at this point, for Silverstone, it just matters what Oscar Piastri does. If Oscar Piastri can get his act together and be a pick and roll, basically, be the pick and roll for Lando, and qualify second with Lando on pole, now you have a movable bollard, so to speak, against Max. And if they can just dip on Max, which is unheard of, but if they can, this is a slam dunk. Max can't, if he's too far behind you, he can't affect you. He just can't. Now, a well-timed safety car will screw him over. Another thing that I loved about McLaren did at this race, which I have been shouting at the screen for 5 years. Whenever Red Bull pits in crunch time, pit with them. Always.
Don't do
They're
that
going
opposite.
to do something smart. Go with them. And Lando did it both times. Both pit with Max. That's how you do it, man. Because then you're on the same tires. None of this like, well, I'll go long to catch him later on with a tire advantage. No. Go with him and beat him one-on-one. And Lando should have been able to do that. And
if anything, aside from battling out on the track, the teams at the pit walls are duking it out on strategy. The strategy is what's actually, believe it or not, people are saying that McLaren, now you just mentioned that, Didi, and it got me thinking. It's not just the car. The team as a whole, their strategy has been A1 the entire time. And that's what's been getting them up in the point. They're basically
they've tried to do two different things. They tried to do different things where they'll say,
yes.
well, Lando, go along in your first stint so that on your next set of tires you have a tire advantage. They try that. Ferrari is known for trying that when they're fighting for a win. I don't know why, because Ferrari's not known for the tire saving ability, but Lando really was able, in Spain, it's the same thing. In Spain, Lando went long, had a tire advantage, nearly beat Max, should have beaten him. But another thing I want to say is Barcelona and Silverstone are very similar characteristics. They're just high-speed corners that chew your tires. And so if Max was competitive at Barcelona, if Lando was faster at Barcelona, just couldn't put it all together, it's going to be a similar scenario, I think, at Silverstone, and I'm very excited to see the home British crowd cheering on a homeboy and seeing what happens. We all know Checo Perez is going to qualify 19th. He's going to go out in Q1.
Logan Sargent's going to out-qualify him. Mercy.
Yeah, exactly. So there's just no point in talking about Checo, but Max will have to fight it on his own.
So all right, rounding it out, I'll say one more thing, and then we're going to get into our Paraguayos and Matatan, because I got to go be a parent at some point. For my part, I think Silverstone will be exciting. I will also be doing my part and sending an email to Braxton and Brixley about how Lewis Hamilton's tires, they're sabotaging him, and they need to stop trying to kill him, and they need to stop messing with his car.
Your first email didn't work?
No, the first one worked too well, so now I got to figure out how to send another one. All right, we want win 104. No, I don't know. We pray. All right, listen, I need it. All right, all right. So I know the crowd goes nuts. You know what? Nobody can talk to me after that. All right,
I'll cry.
Insufferable.
I will cry.
I will have similar emotions like when the Dominican Republic, I think it was like the U20 soccer team qualified for the Olympics. We are absolutely trash at soccer, but no one could talk to me for like 3 days. I was like, oh yes. Anyways, and so let's go into this Paraguayo of the race and your Matatan. So George, first we're gonna go with you, and we're gonna start off with our Paraguayos first. So George, who was your Paraguayo?
My Paraguayo is the Red Bull pit wall.
Ooh. All right. You want to
Max
elaborate, or no need to say
pit stop.
that slow ass pit stop is what?
Yep.
All right.
Also, they didn't tell Max that Lando had a 5-second time penalty. Max could have let him by and just hung with him, and this would have been a moot point.
I don't think he would have listened.
That's probably not, but that's a 2-time in a situation where they had a slow pit stop and that. My Paraguayo of the race goes back to 2021 Abu Dhabi. Michael Massey, you allowed
Michael Massey can always catch straight.
You allowed this whole debacle to happen because it's called a mountain rice. Okay, Michael, look at the fallout of your stupid decisions all those years ago. You denied the GOAT in 8th, and now we're still seeing repercussions of your stupidity. Paraguayo of the race, Michael Massey, somehow.
Dog. Hey, I just want you to know, off the tip, I'm gonna make this into a clip, and it's gonna be circulating.
It's gonna be great.
Michael Massey can always catch strays. Hey, you're not invited to Didi's house ever, Michael Massey.
Never invited to the cookout.
No, my man, honestly, in my Paraguayo of the race, to be completely honest, it's gonna be Max. I'm going the easy route because I just feel like, again, at this point, you're 3-time, most likely 4-time drivers champion, right? Yes, piggybacking off what George said, Red Bull should have let him know, hey, he's got track limits, 5-second penalty. Just let him do his thing, and then you could just pass him on the road. All that let me know, like everything we've been talking about, is Max is surgical, but cracks under pressure. Right, so Paraguayo, and it's for him getting mad at all the wrong people and for him not taking accountability. So I'm hoping that the FIA and F1 is going to make him take accountability, because 100,000% I agree with everything we've been saying. And that 10-second penalty, those are K-Mag numbers. All right, that's why K-Mag just was racking those up. Oh, 10 seconds, okay, whatever.
I will say,
all right. So
to your point, hang on. To your point, The only thing that happens here is that Max is King Joffrey. The Red Bull team is Cersei and her dad. Like, they're like, no, 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 no. You did everything right, Max. No, it's their fault. Everything is their fault. You are my little baby boy. Every time. And I'm sick of it. Look, someone has to have integrity on that pit wall and say, like, Max, you were out of pocket. Like, we love you.
I mean,
keep the energy, but you gotta change some things. No one.
Listen,
no one.
Red Bull's gonna be singing a different tune when Max is on Mercedes next year. Yeah, I'm clocking it. Joss, first of all, Max loves his dad too much, and that beef with Christian Horner, it's getting. But that's a different conversation for a different time. George, who is your matatan for this race?
I lost you there for a second.
No, yeah. Who's your matatan for this race?
Oh, it's Lando, bro. Lando, absolutely. Lando.
All right.
And yes, it is the easiest route because
right. Hey, it's your matatan. You gotta make explanation.
Hey, Lando, listen. I told you guys earlier he's at 80% right now. He's at 80% with finding the grips of a good car in Formula One. So I think that Lando is on the up and up, just like Zach, just like the rest of the team. And this race, I mean, obviously we had Miami, but dude, like, it's been consecutive good points, podiums, finishes, etc., etc., etc. It's Lando.
All right.
I'm seeing it. The progress has been astronomical for the guy.
So
best car on the grid.
What you're saying is
and team. I'm saying right now.
Fair. So Lando's got to have his Rock Lee moment. Shouts out Naruto. He's got to take the weights off of his ankles to go super fast.
He needs to be A1 from here on out.
Yeah, I got you. Naruto again. Shouts out. Didi, who is your matatan for this week's race?
This also reminds me of Goku and Dragon Ball Z.
100%.
Training with weights on. So yeah.
Yep.
I will say my matatan of El Gran Premio de Austria, Nico Hülkenberg. Here's why. Nico Hülkenberg battled against a Red Bull who was apparently arguably faster. And Nico drove also against the absolute nata that is Kevin Magnussen. Even though he's his teammate, the suck my balls mate came back in Nico and Kevin Magnussen this weekend because he was trying things against Nico. I'm like, dog, it's your teammate.
It's because Denmark lost in the Euros, dog. You already know.
Exactly. But I think Nico Hülkenberg drove a fantastic race. It was super solid, sensible, level-headed, and I liked him. My like runner-up, my honorable mention for Matatang is Oscar Piastri. The way he drove that race. He, first of all, the pass on Charles on lap 1 on the outside of the same turn that he got Carlos in. And then just driving a quick race, being stuck behind, I forgot who it is at this point, but he finished where he should have finished. He probably was going to catch George. And I thought, but yeah, my matatang is Nico Hülkenberg. Honorable mention is Oscar Piastri.
Shouts out Hulk and Oscar. Yeah, so my matatan of this race is going to be Toto Wolff for almost making George Russell crash. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Let me freaking drive!
Shouts out George. Shouts out George Russell. My matatan is George Russell. Because whatever, he still had to qualify high enough to start P3, and he still had to have a decent race to get that pace out in front of the Ferrari to get that win. So I'm not gonna. A win is a win. A win is a win. But my cold matatans are Toto Wolff for making him almost crash, almost happened, and George for actually bringing that thing home and getting that second victory. Yes.
Lewis, we can win this. Lewis, all to play for Lewis.
Oh,
George, we can win this. George, we can win this. George, we can.
First of all,
chill out.
I want to say that I'm mad at both of y'all. How are both of you really good at F1 impressions? Didi's got. I didn't realize Didi, you had a Toto impersonation in your arsenal. George has a decent Carlos Sainz. Didi has a. Mine suck. I'm not gonna do it. All right, y'all. That is going to be it for this week. Please continue to watch Silverstone. I may call upon a part 2 for next week. I think it is going to be an exciting race. As always, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for watching this podcast. Please remember, if you are watching it, to comment, like, subscribe, tell your mommies, your papis, your tios, your tias, abuelos, abuelas. This was George Nelson, Didier Breval, I'm Emi Bertre for the F1 Monoplaza F1 podcast. Peace.
Nos fuimos.